some tenderness. We'll walk upon the water, we'll rise above the mist with a little peace and some harmony. We'll take the world together, we'll take them by the hand. 'Cause I got a hand for you. Oh, I wanna run with you. Yesterday I saw you standing there. Your hair was down, your eyes were red. No comb, I touched your hair. I said get up and let me see you smile. We'll take a walk together, walk the road a while. 'Cause I got a hand for you, I got a hand for you. I wanna run with you. Won't you let me run with you? Yeah. Hold my hand. Want you to hold my hand. Hold my hand. I make you do a place where you can be anything you wanna be, because I wanna love you the best that I can.
Dang, man.
I got WD-40.
I got a lighter, we could make a torch.
I figured you'd have 10 W40 at least.
Come on, Alan. Bernie, get over here.
Hotfoot, come on.
Hotfoot.
Top.
Yeah, we were scouting up here about a month and a half just to look, for a good site to do this. And so we're on comms, sort of on and off comms, and we get over onto 180 over onto Wolfpen Gap, and Joel's behind Alan. His bike's starting to sputter, and what it was his plug wire had come off, and so he's pouring gasoline down into his catalytic converter, which commenced to burning. And so finally Joel got him to pull over, and he's like, "What?" Bike's on fire. So they use their water bottles.
Life when you need a camera, and that would have been great, because he would have been infamous forever.
So he's no longer foot on the board. Call him hot foot. All right, we all know what we're doing here today. We all knew Ken. We all knew him different ways and to different levels. And Ken was a multifaceted person with a ton of different talents. And so I think we all shared different parts of Ken, so to speak. Got to know different, almost different versions of him. But he was a wonderful friend to all of us in the board and to everybody here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So here to commemorate our friendship with Ken and our fondness. And I want to say, I'm not here to say goodbye, because part of what I hope that this group does is keep them alive, keep the memory alive. And let's commence with stories about Ken and share those stories. I can tell I'm already breaking up already. So I would like to, just have a couple of people that I already talked to, but we can sit here and share after they get done saying their piece, because like I said, people got to know Ken in different ways. The way I got to know him was about 13 years ago at, what was that? That was the last El Paseo with Mark Davis was hosting that, and I got to meet Ken, and I got to meet him the next few events with the events hosted by Sean and Matt. And I didn't get to know him all that well for a while. And because he was always one of those guys who, I was early back into riding, and when we would take off at a light, I'd never see him again. So didn't get to ride with him much back then. But over the years, we started really getting into talking about route planning. I was running events out of West Virginia, and so I tapped on his shoulder to help me out in route planning, and organization of routes, and then we really got into that, and he invited me to help host the farts and starts. So I was really fortunate to do that, and anybody who got to work with setting up an event with Ken, you guys know how much work he put into it, to all of our mutual benefit, and I'll never forget him for it. He was kind of a mentor to me, so I'm gonna miss him. But I hope everybody, keeps the memory alive. I want to thank Nikki, because in knowing Ken as well as I got to know him in hosting rides, I saw him change in the past 9 years. He came more out of his shell. I think everybody here who knew him for longer than that period of time knew a much more quiet, reserved guy who stood off in the back in the mid-2000s and probably before, to a guy who was out hanging out, actually didn't go to bed by 8 o'clock, and would have more than one cigar, before packing it in the night. So, I'm gonna miss him, and he's kind of irreplaceable, but we'll all just fill in the gaps, in the next events. So, yes.
Nikki, go. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you can go.
Okay.
Asked me to say a few things about Ken. Today riding up here, Chris was chastising me for not having my friend, who's a speechwriter for one of the governors, the Georgia governors, for not writing me a speech. So you'll all have to just bear with me. It's not real polished, okay? So one of the things, when I first started riding up here, we'd ride all the main drags. And finally, Ken started sharing his routes with us, and all of a sudden we found roads that didn't exist. We didn't know existed. So every time we ride now, it's one of Ken's roads. So we're constantly doing a memorial for Ken because of that. But I lived in constant fear because I didn't want to screw up when I was riding with Ken, because I would get blacklisted, and that was one of the fears I had. If I made a really bad mistake out there, he would take me off the list, and I wouldn't get the SR routes anymore, and I wouldn't be invited to ride with him. So I survived that, and I just want you to know that's an accomplishment for me. So there's a part of Ken. So we used to meet at the coffee house near where he used to live, up near Buckhead. So we would meet there, and of course when I would get there, Ken would always be, he'd be hitting his coffee, and I'd walk in, we'd say, okay, we're ready to go, we'd take off. So one time we walk in, I sit down with Ken, and these two 30-something females walk in, and they start gushing over us, and they're saying, oh, you guys look so nice in your gear, and I'm like, you can tell this doesn't happen to me. So I'm sitting there saying, what? This has never happened to me. And finally I said, I know what's going on. It's the company. I'm with Ken. So after they, did their thing and they left, I said, does this happen to you very often? He goes, yeah. And so he was embarrassed. But anyway, so that's one of my fond memories of Ken, is that I would get attention that I would never get before when I was with Ken. Some of you others have had that experience. But, here's one of our friends. Anyway, so that's basically all I have to say. And that's just a memory I have of Ken. And the other, I would say one other thing is, Ken would give us these fabulous routes, and then when we get with him, he'd say, you lead. Okay? I said, oh my goodness. And so I would lead. And during the whole trip, Ken would be about 10 feet from my bumper. I couldn't lose him. No matter how far I pushed, I would look in my mirror, and there he was with all those bright lights. Matter of fact, Chris, you probably have a story. So Chris one time pulled off, and he gets off, we're getting gas, and Chris walks around, he's looking at the back of his bike, and Ken says, what's the problem? He says, I think your lights have melted the paint on the back of my bike. And Chris is a much faster rider than I am, and he couldn't lose Ken either. Ken would be right there. So anyway, we're going to miss him, no question about it. Thank you.
Saying, I don't know what you were doing, how kind he was. but this group was very important to him. He loved it. He loved the friendships. He loved the companionship. He loved to ride, and I thank you all for that. And I don't think that I need to say how much he put into it and what commitment he put into it, because I think everybody knows, you know, it was. But he was very, very special. He certainly turned my life around, and I think I turned his around. And we had some amazingly fabulous times. He just come back from South Africa, which is very sad. He didn't want to come back, but you know, and I wish it was longer, but I've just got to keep those memories. One of the very funny memories I have of Ken, I have lots of them, but most of them can't be repeated. But, but I have one in 2012 when we just started dating. And Ken had two favorite places. One of them was Blowing Rock and the other was Cedar Key. So he took me to Blowing Rock in 2012. He wanted me to see Blowing Rock, and was very excited to take me there. We were going to see the Christmas lights. We were on our way to Virginia, and so we left very early in the morning to get to Blowing Rock to be in time for dinner. And he deliberately or inadvertently, I don't know, used one of his motorcycle rides.
That was intentional.
Even though we were in a car, it took us 12 hours to get to Blowing Rock. And at one point and I'm going to be rude, but at one point we were coming down this S-bend in the car. It's bad enough in the back with him, but in the car it's just like this, and there was a sign that said, "Adopt this highway," and I just went, "There's no way I'm adopting this fucking highway." But I think an important thing that Ken would like you to know, and I know that he discussed this so often with Tim O'Donnell and things, is that Ken would like everybody to know, and he has said this to Tim before, that if anything like this happened, that he was doing what he loved to do and that he's happy.
All right. And we were just sitting, they had a place where everybody would go to watch the sunset. I don't think it's there anymore. It was one of the bars that burned down. And we're sitting there, a couple of us are sitting there. Ken comes strolling in his usual way, which is very nonchalant. And there was a table of 5 women. Well, you can almost guess what the 5 women did. I look at my wife, and Ken just walks on by. So, of course, later on, I walk up to him, I said, "You do realize that this table of women were just fawning all over you?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, I wanted to see the sunset. You know, I'm like you. Really? This. So that's one. So same takeoff as theirs. And we talked about the gym a lot. Every time we'd see each other, "Hey Ken, how you doing? Hey Ken, how you doing? Still working out?" Obviously not enough. So then he tells me about this mutant ninja warrior workout that he does. And after months and months of talking about it, he convinced me to do it. Not the same results. Well, what is it? 30 minutes twice a week.
30 minutes twice a week.
Yeah, this is an hour, 6 days a week. So no, it didn't work. So we would always really chit chat about that a lot and go back and forth on techniques and working out and stuff like that. Then the third one I have is just a simple conversation. The man did not like straight lines. And he didn't want to talk about straight lines. When he was headed out to Red Rock, he and a couple guys, maybe some people here, they took their bikes out on a trailer, which inadvertently was the smart thing to do, because that was the infamous heat dome that happened that year, and my wife and I were in that for 3 days. We were in that. So before we had went, we were probably on one of the farts or starts, and we were talking about it. And I'd said how much we enjoyed going out west. We go out west a lot. and I described what it was like. You'd be going through these valleys and just mountains on the sides and these just long. You could see his eyes glaze. I was like, Ken. He goes, nah, that really does nothing for me. Okay, well, we'll talk about the curves then. So, needless to say, very large hole to fill. He's going to be missed.
Years ago, right, with the same, on the way to the same El Paseo, and Jake and I rode with him, and Jake had picked me up on his way up from Miami, and I was on my V-Strom 1000 with my golf club strapped on the back because I was going to a family reunion on the way after a couple days at the last El Paseo, and you know, we stopped for coffee, took off in the morning, and we got about 6 corners down whatever road it was, and I didn't see either of them again. And I get down and they're stopped at the bottom chit-chatting, you know, the bikes are off. You know, I think at one point I chided them about, if you're going to stop that long, make a fire or make some coffee at least. I just don't get a chance to stop like this often. So, you know, when Sean and I started running events, Ken was there with us. He helped us with routes. Craig was our initial go-to guy, and Ken came in and backed us up. And the quality of our rides and our events got so much better because he was, not only was he, you know, just as a large personality in any group, but he was always there early. He was always the welcoming committee. He was always sitting there ready to do whatever we needed him to do. And it was, you know, it was a great friend and a good companion to have on the road. And you know, I will miss him dearly. And you know, I appreciate everyone coming here to do this and the work that's been put into this gathering right now. And you know, if we could thinking of ways that we can keep the memories alive and keep the routes alive and keep that spirit alive in what we're doing, I think is, you know, it's something that some good work for us all to take on and go forward with.
2 years back, start of 2014 in Robbinsville, and so I had gone down overnight from Virginia Beach on the bike. First ride of the year, pretty much for me. And so we were going to meet up and do some scouting before the event, like a day or two early. So I started following him, and I had just gotten a GoPro from Terry, and so I had it all ready to go. And so he's like, hey, if you could take some video, but you got to stay close. I was like, then you got to slow down. I mean, the first time we're on communication, probably the only time I've ever talked to Ken on communication, because that is something he would not do. But so we were on 28 coming out of Franklin, and he says, okay, let's go. And I mean, it was just gone. And so I'm like messing with the camera, trying to catch up to him. We go off on this back road and caught up to him a few times. As I just found out recently, all the video from that was vibrating. The camera was loose. So it was totally wasted. You know, sometimes the camera would go over this way and it made it look like I was passing him. So I should have kept it. But you couldn't tell it was Ken. That's how bad it was vibrating. But at one point, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to catch up, and he goes up over this hill, and I didn't know the road turns hard to the right there. And I went over and I made it straight up this person's driveway, just like you did. And it was a gravel driveway, and I'm like, you know, looking like a monkey fucking a football, you know. Wow, nice. So anyway, what happens? I go back up to him and I catch up, and he goes, where'd you go? I wanted to go off-road. But he was always fun, and he bugged me for about a year. Keep looking at that video. I want to find some of that video. It was just totally wasted. But he was always a good time, always a good person to talk to about routing. And he'd have been happy with the routes today because I sent some of you guys on gravel. So he would have been real happy with that.
It was notoriously hard to pick up checks from. I'd stayed at his house several times in the earlier days in Atlanta, and I always like when I stay with somebody, I like to take him to dinner and pay the check. But every time we'd go, he always had the check already taken care of before we could even ask for it, and it bothered me because it was kind of a point of pride. You know, I wasn't saying, no, I should be buying you the dinner, and he would just never do it. So he came to visit in Savannah one time with one of his friends from Atlanta on a business trip. And I managed to talk him into doing lunch downtown. And I got there 45 minutes before lunch, and I talked to the wait staff. I said, here's my credit card, take care of everything, put it on this, run a standard tip and add another $20 on it. Just do everything you gotta do. Do not bring a check to the table. And that all went off just like it was supposed to. And we got done, we got up to leave, and he's like, well, where's the check? And I said, I already took care of it. And he goes, nice. And I'm like going, yes. Because you as a professional, you're just like, oh, I just got praise from God. Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
I thought you said with Ken it was hard to pick up chicks. I'm going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you know Sean Goulding, Lone Earth. He hates going off-road, gravel, anything. Hates, he calls the SR routes the shitty roads routes. And so there was a spring event coming up, and I don't remember when, it was probably 8-10 years ago, and Sean and I were going to go riding together, and Ken said, well, you want to do some scouting for me? He's always doing, so we did some scouting road, and he said, he was going to warn us. He said, I don't know if it's all paved or not, and oh, that's all right. So we're going, and it was probably early March, late February, early March, and so it's cold in the mornings, and we're on this road, and we come up over the top, and it kind of made a right, and it was almost looked like a driveway that just turned to gravel, and we're going like 60, 55, and not only that, 50 feet down the road, there is water running across. Oh, geez. And it turns out under the water is ice. Oh. And that was about the scariest 10, 12 feet. I was on 1100S, and Sean was ahead of me. He's like, holy shit. And so that was bad enough. So then maybe a year, 18 months later, I think Ken did this on purpose. Me and Sean, I can't remember, there's a third person there. I don't know if Joel was with her or not, but we're out scouting again, and Sean's like, this road looks familiar. It was the same damn road. We come up over and he goes, I know this road.
No ice?
No ice. No ice. It was much later in the year. Oh.
They've got all the water crossings marked, I think, so.
First I want to say it's a privilege and an honor to get to have Nikki ride with me and to be here with you guys. I met Ken through Nikki, probably 8 years ago, and she pulls me to the side, she said, you guys should go ride, and she goes, he's a really good rider, and I'm thinking, yeah, you hear that all the time. So we got together and we went to ride, and I think we rode from Milton to Barnsley Gardens for lunch. And I wasn't necessarily so impressed with how fast Ken rode, but it was how fast he rode on slow roads. And also his routes. Everybody's talking about his routes. So we rode from, like I say, Milton, which is next to Alpharetta, over to Barnsley Gardens. I couldn't tell you today the route. I'd never been on any of those roads. I couldn't repeat it. But what was really amazing was I've been the mayor of my town for 14 years. And Ken took me places that I still to this day couldn't take on the same roads or even know about it in my own town.
I think we've all got a few Ken stories here. I got some like Joel's and some like yours. But I first met Ken in 2002 on a motorcycle, a snowy day. So this, and of course we're the only two riders on the road with snow on the side of the road, and we did the passing glance at each other going different directions. And then we both turned around, passed each other again, and then we finally turned around again, met each other in the middle of the road. And then if you don't think guys are catty, so we pulled up, he pops up his helmet, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna hate this guy. So, anyway, so, you sort of just assume he's gonna be, one of those guys. But it turned out to be the most incredible guy. And back then, when we'd scout routes, it wasn't, sitting the computer. Ken always said, no, we got to go ride it. We got to make sure every road's right. So every time it was tank to tank. We'd never stop until it was time to get gas.
And when we stopped to get gas, we called Bill Farron and we're like, hey, we're on this road. If we go up this road, can you go here? Can you go through this road? Bill would say, yeah, help the top of his head. He could tell you, he could tell you where it would go. So anybody knows me knows I like little practical jokes every now and then. So I also had to play as wingman a few times at the restaurants with the waitresses. So I had the waitress come up and the Wheel of Fortune was on, and and Ken got to use the bathroom. She asked, is he somebody famous? And I was like, yeah, that's Vanna White's boy toy. And she's like, really? So a few more goes by, then he goes up and does something again. And another waitress says, is that really Vanna White's boyfriend? I was like, no, you misunderstood. That's Pat Sajak's boy toy. And then they're like, oh. so I kind of turned it back away from him. And I do the same, I'd catch Christine as he walked by at the El Paseo events, and I was like, stop looking, his ears aren't even, so trying to find some little flaw. But I was like, how can you even look at those? But anyway, he's one of those guys you think he's going to be above it all and arrogant, but he's just the real deal and the nicest guy you can imagine, and most helpful guy, and really got me into all the rider training, which is I think the most important thing that I think all of us took advantage of, the ride smarts, and I think it's just a great legacy there.
You were always a better rider when you came out.
Yeah.
And he'd always share his insights. If he rode behind me now.
If he can slow down long enough for you.
Well, Alan, you actually deserve a round of applause because you are the only person.
I actually got a Ken one. He pinged me and said, how are you going up? And I said, up back roads up through Virginia. He said, let's meet somewhere in Virginia and ride together to Snowshoe. And we met somewhere in Virginia, had lunch, and he said, I've got a scouting route going up to Snowshoe. And I said, good, let's go. Well, at 6 o'clock in the evening, I said, Ken, how long's the route? Oh, we'll get in at 10:45. I said, Ken, I can't go that long. And I actually made him ride on the interstate for 50 miles to cut off 3 hours of his route. And the great thing is, he still talked to me the next day.
Memorial service, the very under the table memorial service that was happened in Virginia, and Tim wrote this, and I'll just read it to you. He said, Ken set the bar incredibly high in everything he did. He not only excelled, he helped others reach their potential. In the BMW sport touring and motorcycle communities, Ken was a respected and loved icon. He organized and hosted many events set in the mountains he loved so much. He provided routes, sharing those combinations of road scenery and riding challenges that created a lifetime memory. Riding is an engaging activity, or an intensely engaging activity. Ken was always ready to help or demonstrate how to. He loved riding, second only to the great love he shared with his soulmate, Nikki. Thank you, Tim. Ken always greeted friends like family and strangers as friends. He eagerly shared his knowledge and passion for riding. His talents were obvious, but Ken never acted like the star he was. Some people touch our hearts and souls. Ken did. The perfect ride is always just around the curve. Ken has gone around the corner ahead as usual, showing us how we should love, care for, and respect each other. Ken's passion for life and his love will live on in family and friends. Our love for him will live forever.
And so, 2 events later, I started helping with those. And so I was super intimidated because everybody talked about what a great rider Ken was. And I wasn't. I was from Indiana and I couldn't keep up with Bernie or anybody else in the group. And so I'm horrified, having just had shoulder surgery. Ken says, hey, down in Maggie Valley, let's plan on riding together. We'll go scout out. I want to, scout out a place in Dollywood or whatever, that's Sevierville. And I am terrified. I don't want to ride with Ken. And so somebody loads I trail my bike down, somebody loads it for me. Our day to ride, it's pouring down rain, and Ken says, let's just forget it. And I tell Bernie and everybody after that, I said, man, I'm so relieved I don't have to ride with Ken. I was so worried about that. Well, of course, that night, Ken goes, hey, what are you going to do tomorrow? I was going to go, why don't we go ahead and do our route? We'll be leaving at 7. And then he looks at me, he knows I don't get up early, he goes, is that too early for you? So we get out, we go, we start on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is fine from Indiana. I can do some sweepers, and I think I'm really impressing Ken. You know, we ride a little bit, and I just pull off because I think that's what we're supposed to do. And, you know, Ken is tank to tank, and he wants to know what the hell I'm doing pulling off. If we're going to be in time, so, and can you pick up the pace some? And then he says, by the way, just to let you know, there was this instance, a double yellow line, I would have passed right there. And then another instance, I would have taken him right there on the left-hand turn. So I'm feeling so much pressure. We get in, the next section is real technical. It's the back of the Rattler or something, and I see the sign for it, and I think, oh, I've got this. You know, I rode this last year. Oh, and so I'm riding for all I'm worth. And the next thing I see Ken back there doing this. So I pull over, and he gets off the bike. He comes up. He goes, "Are you tired?" I'm like, "No, I'm great." Why? He goes, "Man, you are all over the road. You're crossing the double yellow line. How are you counter steering?" And I said, "What? Well, I don't know, like anybody else." "Well, tell me about it." So he tries to teach me while we're riding, and it was a disaster. And then he did whatever he did to whoever it was who said, ride up real close to me. He's riding along here, and he keeps patting his sides. "Here, come ride right here," and of course I couldn't. And and Ken would not, if you knew Ken, he didn't like to lead, he liked to follow. And I just said, "Ken, I can follow faster than I can lead." And so, well, if we're gonna make it to LJ in time for lunch. And so I should have died. I mean, I was going as fast as I can anytime there was a straight, and then I'm just so hard on the brakes, and we made it in time for lunch. Long story short, he began to just coach me over the phone. And I took some time to practice the stuff he taught me. And just like with Craig, I mean, he was a mentor, not only a riding mentor, but he always was setting an example. He was always setting the buy higher. He always gave the benefit of the doubt. And we were pretty opposite in the way we worked things. And Ken would have been very easy for us just to have an arm's length relationship being in Indiana, and it was never that way. Whenever we had a conversation, Ken always wanted to know what was going on. He was always just kind of prying in a little more. I mean, he was so thoughtful and considerate and interested in you as a person. And I never expected that from Ken. And so all that to say, it's amazing that we were able to work together, because I know I had to just drive him absolutely crazy. And he was a great friend and a great mentor. So.
One of the most important things is the board was starting to shrink a little bit at that time, and we talked many a time back during those few years about what if the board collapses. Boards were becoming less popular, and the goal was always keep this crew, the Southeast crew, and anybody who wanted to join us riding together. And the success of that is that we're still holding events, with 50 people. The last one you guys did was 50 something in LJ. So again, is really just very dedicated to this core group of people. So that'll be missed, but we'll just have to keep it going, guys. So anyone else have anything? My honor. So the route's back. There is a requirement here before we leave. We have this in front of us. Everybody has to donut out.
And we're going to have a group photograph.
First.